Welcome and welcome back. It's another amazing day in paradise. Thank you so much for if you're still with me. Thank you so much if you're just hearing this. This is your first video. I've been talking about the platform that I'm building and some of the projects that I'm working on. I wanted to speak a little bit before I go and veer off into a different direction. I've been speaking specifically about what my responsibility is as Mama Kai, the emancipated mama. And so I've already talked about how important it is, the definition of emancipation, how I use it, what it means to me to be emancipated. I've also talked about connect to respect and respect to connect. And now I want to talk about our obsession with oppression. And how, and what most people don't realize is that oppression starts with how you're parented. For every child that has a parent that says no, that is their first experience with oppression. I think one of the greatest gifts that I learned from studying to be a parent coach with the Jai Institute for Parenting was understanding mindsight. MINDSIGHT, which is talked about in a book called The Power of Showing Up by Tina Payne Bryson and Dan Siegel. And what they say mindsight is actually looking at, life from your child's perspective, like getting into their mind, seeing inside their mindsight, right? And this is really something you can do with anyone that relatively well or even partially well. Sometimes when you understand, like one of the things that I'm realizing is that now that I understand patterns of behavior, I understand people way more than they realize. And so, but speaking of specifically to oppression, when you're dealing with a 2-year-old who doesn't know anything other than what they're experiencing, I often tell people that children learn primarily by imitation first and instruction maybe. Because if their nervous systems are unregulated, they're not learning from whatever you're trying to tell them. And if you don't understand that, then you're really banging your head up against a wall. So going back to this idea that a child, a toddler doesn't know anything, or even, a 4-year-old who knows some things. The fact is that children are not mini adults. They don't have the same experiences. They only are repeating what they see. And what makes them unique is how they repeat it, right? How the one child who's been exposed to Paw Patrol or Roblox or, Mickey and Minnie or whatever, how they relate, how they take that information, process it, and then spit it back out into the world. Because I can guarantee you that none of us are unique in what we do or how we behave. It is something that we got from someone 100% of the time. And so when that child is exploring at 2 and then they're stopped and told no, and often told no repeatedly over and over again, that is a child's first experience with oppression. And the greater level of oppression that they experience then sets the pattern for how they will then oppress somebody later in life. Let me repeat that. To the depth that a child has experienced oppression in their early childhood years especially, will be the depth in which they will oppress others later. So a lot of times you hear oppressor, 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 people speaking of oppressors, not realizing that the reason why they're oppressors is because they were first oppressed. And so oppressors are not specific to one demographic, excuse me. Most people are oppressors in one way, shape, or form. Because if we expect others to change without first changing ourselves, then we are expecting something from somebody else, and the change should first come from ourselves. One of my favorite quotes is by Malcolm X, and he said, usually when people are sad, my notes, they don't say anything. They just cry over their condition. But when they get angry, they bring about change. And one of the things I find really fascinating about Malcolm X is that the Malcolm X who was martyred was totally different from the Malcolm Little he was as in his youth, right? And so when he got angry, he wasn't forcing other people to change. He was actually changing himself, because he went through several revolutions, right? Or several evolutions, both really, right? And who the man he became and who he ended up, who he was when he was martyred is totally different. And because we get to choose how we want to use our anger, then no one can ever control us if we don't let them, without our permission. And so I want to close that and leave just those little nuggets of thought, because I've just started the conversation on that. There's not a whole lot of depth to it. I've just thrown out some things that people are probably not thinking of, but I will return to it at some point. Right now I want to shift to the revolutionary act of love.